All right. Vibhor, can you confirm?
Yes, yes, we can see that.
All right. So let's start with data service. So both data service and apps are the new addition to UiPath family, and data service is something that lies in the manage phase in the hyper automation platform. If you see, uh, for the folks who are not familiar, uh, UiPath categorizes automation in not just the specific RPA. It is basically a full-blown platform, which we call as hyperautomation, that starts with your process discovery, which is in the discover phase. Then we have your build, manage, and run, which is your typically orchestrator, robots, and UiPath Studio, with addition of AI Fabric, test managers. These categories are also getting a lot of products in their kitty. And then we have the engage phase, where we have these chatbots, action center, anything that basically engages the user. And this is where your apps will also come. And then we have the insights, which is in the last measure phase. Uh, this is basically being worked on as well, so that the measure covers all the phases. That's what I know. So that's a pretty basic introduction of both of them and how they lie in the UiPath product family. So for the data service, let me start by saying what it is exactly. So data service is a persistent data storage service, and it now adds the capability of storing data in your robotic process automation, anything that is related to your RPA processes directly within the UiPath ecosystem. So no more utilization of temporary files or shared folders or databases for that matter, and anything and everything can be done by using data service directly. Creating data service entities is really simple. It's a no code, low code platform. You can directly click here and create the entities. And entities will look something like this. There will be certain system built in fields and other fields that you can define. Uh, what what you can do in this data service offering is that you can build relationship between one entity and the other entity. For example, here you saw that we have department and employee, right? So now the employee has a relationship with the department. That is multiple employees can belong to one of the departments, and that's why we have a definition of type relationship that you can establish, and you can basically create entities that makes more sense for the business processes, right? Additionally, you have the ability of adding the data directly from here or from the UiPath Studio. uh, of it, it's not just adding of the data. You can do anything and everything within the UiPath Studio, and you have a link given right here on top of the data service uh, page itself. So once you click on it, it will take you to the official documentation where you can read all about it, how to use it, how to configure the data entities that you want to use it in a particular process, and anything and everything related to that. I'll also want to add that we have the ability of adding something called choice it, which is kind of like a custom definition of uh, it's kind of an enum. If you know in the programming terms, if you know enum, it's kind of an enum for data service where you can define the list of items that you want it to belong to, and that can be used as a field within your entity as well. Apart from that, you have the ability of making any of the fields as of type file, which can store any kind of file up till the size of 10 MB. Just be mindful of that. And you can make it more concrete, make it more contextual to the entity by including the files right within the entities as well. So that's an overview. Uh, let's discuss about what you can achieve using data service. So first of the things that comes to the mind when you talk about data service, it is going to reduce the number of arguments that flows from one workflow file to the other. So because these are entity formation, you have one single object that gets created, and all the properties that you see here are basically the property of those objects as well. So it makes your payloads transferring from one workflow to another really easy. And The other thing that comes to the mind in terms of usage is that you can basically use data service in creating entities that make sense for your business processes. You can, for example, build customer entity using information from CRM systems like Salesforce, and you can then make relationship with another ticket entity that will be built by reading the mails that have been raised by that particular customer, or by reading ITSM systems like Zendesk or ServiceNow. So you can do those things and build more context and more integrity around the entities that is being used in your RPA processes. And the next thing, and this is one of the most useful part of data service, is that you can use the entities that has been created as part of one of the RPA processes in completing the complete business case by using that particular entity in any of the other RPA processes. I'll make it easy to understand by quoting an example. For example, you have the standard purchase order process that will create the purchase order, send it out, and wait for the requirements to be filled by the vendor. And once they receive the invoice, you have something called two-way matching process, in which the orders that were sent out to the vendors is matched with the invoice. So for doing that, you have two separate processes right now, right? One is the purchase order process, which takes care of the purchase order, and the two-way matching process, which is initiated only when the invoice comes in, and you have to refer back to the purchase order to which it corresponds. So now that you have entities, the purchase order process can create these entries into the entities, and then the two-way matching process can utilize the already entered entities into itself to make sense out of it. So that's the beauty of it. It makes it more resilient. The integrity of the business process remains intact, and it's a beautiful way to define the processes now that is there. And apart from that, we also have certain things in our official documentation. Let me just get that link up. Couple of use cases that has been quoted for reference. So these are the use case that you can go ahead and read in the official documentation as well. I'll probably put the link in the chat for everyone's reference. Let me do that real quick. And okay, so let's pause a bit. Let's talk about data service, and then I'll quickly move on to apps as well. Vibhor, let's open the platform for questions for data service specifically.
Sure. Guys, if you have any question, just go ahead. You can unmute.
This is Shishir. I have one question. So can we take data service as a replacement to use any SQL table?
Yes, you can.
Then how to achieve those functionality which is we are getting as a table? For example, data like table normalization. Let's say we create multiple table and then join it and create store procedures, different
Oh, okay. No, not that advanced, not right now. It's just entering the product family. So it'll take some time to have that flourished capabilities. But if it's a table referencing other tables and storage capabilities, those kind of things you can do right now. So there are certain other functionalities that you can achieve within the RPA process itself. So you can look for the permutation and combination to achieve those things.
But today we can do all CRUD operation on the data service objects.
Yes, complete CRUD operation can be performed.
And the second question is related to security. Like today, if there is tables are there, like individual business process might have their own sensitive data, so which we don't want to expose. So does this data service has that capability? If suppose I create one entity and there are certain restrictions to that. Okay.
Yes, absolutely. You have your entity level permissions that you can provide, and these are the default roles that you have: data reader, data writer, or administrators. And probably you can customize according to your needs.
Yeah, and this is part of a 20.10 LTS on-premise release, right?
It's a cloud product right now.
Oh, not in on-prem. Okay.
No.
Okay. Thanks.
No problem.
Yeah, hi Anubhav, this is Ramesh.
Hi, Ramesh. Long time.
A long time, yeah. So good overview. Thank you for nice introduction to the new addition to UiPath platform. So I have a few questions. So first thing is, you said there is a persistent database. So the idea is to have this data persistently on the cloud, setup, or is it more of a operational, need that you use it, keep it for some time, and then probably you should remove it? Because there will be a lot of things will come into picture in terms of size, volume. So that is my subsequent question: and what is the volume that you are prescribing that you can manage within this data services?
So I know that from the volume perspective, you are really safe because our product team has done the testing. Even the failover testings have been performed. So you are really safe from the data, the load perspective or the scalability perspective. I'm not exactly sure of the benchmark right now. Uh, I don't have the numbers with me, but it's really scalable, and all the testing from the load perspective, from the failure has been performed already. Uh, the other question, sorry, I missed the other part of it, Ramesh.
So it's basically the persistent part. I mean, it's
Okay,
basically a
yeah, it's
persistent
up
data.
to you. Yeah, it's up to you, Ramesh. And whatever makes sense for the business context, you can absolutely go ahead and use it as a temporary table if you want. And if you want to persist, you can do that as well.
Okay. And do we have the constraints capability today, putting on the columns or the fields that you are designing our, different classes or tables?
That,
Can you put in constraints today?
right now, the when we talk about constraints, it's basically on the relationship part. But the constraints, for example, unique values, or I you get the picture. Unique value or something
Mhm.
similar is in store for 2021 first quarter for.
Okay,
It's under development.
it's under the, okay, okay. But I can't put a condition on a particular field that okay, it can have only these values, or say, for example, a string type. It
That
can,
you can do.
you
Obviously,
can do it.
those
Okay.
are those are the things that you can do. Let me see if I can edit and show you.
Yeah.
Uh, okay, I cannot change
Wait, wait.
the field type, but you can see that there is a field type that you can
Yeah.
choose from.
No, but my question is like, can I put a constraint on it that okay, date cannot be prior to 1/1/1970 and cannot be post say 2040, something like that.
Not for the date, but for the number field, you have that particular freedom.
Right. Okay. Got it. Thank you. The next question is about the file. You mentioned, I think that you already have answered this question I had in mind. So you're saying that you
Uh-huh.
can have files stored today
Yep.
up to 10 MB size.
Yes.
But is there any binary format content we can store there? I mean, is the file system that you're keeping over there or files you're keeping on the data within the data service? But I can
Mhm.
save like images, objects which are basically purely binary,
Anything.
blob kind of a.
The file storage is basically a blob, so you can store any object. That's
Got
okay.
got it. Okay, very nice. And any plan for the on-premise?
It's there,
Future.
but it's a long-term thing.
It's a long.
It depends upon the prioritization and how the customer responds.
Correct, correct. Okay. A couple of more questions. So, let's say that I change my data structure, the entities that I've created
Mhm,
within the data service. I want to modify the structure of it, right?
mhm,
And I think answer is yes. That's what I'm guessing.
mhm.
So that automatically will get updated in my class structure within the UiPath system, right?
Yeah, and uniformly, if I might add. So basically, if you have already developed the workflow, you might have to rework on that if there is a structure change.
Sure, sure. But my classes will get updated
Yeah,
automatically.
absolutely. Yeah,
Right? So from the class hierarchy point of view and class properties and the fields,
yeah,
that automatically will be in sync.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, got it. Of course, I need to modify if I'm making a change of a data type or something.
Mhm,
Then obviously I need to make changes
yeah.
appropriately. One more question. I mean, this is something a wish list that I had. So it
Mhm,
is in a way it's already fulfilled. But another wish list that I have is, can I do it without the database? I don't want to store the database, but I do want to create the entities. So anyway, of course, we can create our own package, our DLL, class structure and hierarchy and all that. but then you have to be very techy. You need to know the programming and all that. Can we build entities? And I'm not looking for persistence part to it. I'm looking at the operational part in memory kind of a data, which I would like to utilize within my system, and that in a way solves that problem, multiple, arguments or situations like that when you have to deal with number of fields. So do we have anything like that where I'm not bothering about the persistence part of it, but I'm looking for the class or the entities creation without
Yeah,
the.
I mean, this lies beyond the scope of data service, and I think Radu is already there. Radu, do you want to take this particular question? Do we have something?
Not that I'm aware of. I may be wrong. I'm not 100% familiar with this, but it's something that makes sense. So if I understood correctly, you wanted something like, I don't know, typed objects, right? That you can use in order to pass arguments or, I don't know, assets or, I don't know, queue items and so on, right?
Yeah, I mean, partly yes. But what I'm looking for is, like I would like to create an entity. You can call it like, say, an object-oriented programming terminology, say class, could be C# based or whatever, language we are using. But looking from the UiPath perspective, I would like to create my entities at UiPath layer and then use it across my workflows or data flow. But I'm not looking for specifically for the persistent part. It's just the operational in-memory kind of, which I'm using for my process execution. And once it is done deal. So something like that I'm looking for. So right now I can achieve it through the data service approach. But then it is, primarily, as Anubhav has rightly mentioned, the objective here is the persistence. But I'm going a little beyond it, where I do not need the persistence, but I do need the entities.
As far as I know, we don't have this right now. I will check and I will come back to you. I don't know, Vibor, do we have Ramesh?
Yes, I have
email?
details. Yes, I have all the details. So Ramesh, we will come back to you on your question.
All right. I'll basically ask you guys to. I just have 10 minutes more for my slot, and I
Yes.
don't want to overrun.
So
Okay,
we have some question on the chat also. So
yeah,
in case
I'll answer that after that. I'll
Okay, sure.
answer in the chat itself. Okay, and I'll take you through the apps. Probably there will be certain things that can be covered there as well. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Moving on quickly to the apps part. So let me start by defining what app is. So apps is it's a really niche way of presenting your RPA processes to your users. It's a great way of creating a presentation layer over top of your attended and unattended processes both. And it basically gives you a capability of adding a modern interface over any kind of legacy apps that you might have, or it basically helps you in providing a good way, a better way to facilitate the interaction with the users. So this is one of the examples. I'll quickly show you all the capabilities that's there in the apps. So the first of the things is that obviously you have the layouts available. You can design your app the way you want to. You have the ability of binding your fields to process arguments, so that once you create certain events, for example, here I had a button that had an event of firing one of the processes, and to run it in a synchronous way. That means my robot, while my robot is running, I'll not be able to use these particular apps. So you have those kind of mechanisms built in the apps as well, so that you can cover those kind of scenarios. Once it's done, it loads and shows the values anywhere, wherever you require it to be. It is capable of handling complex data types like tables as well, not just the simple ones. And you have the ability of creating modals, the pop-up windows if you want. And you have the ability, like I said, that one of the way of introducing running the process was synchronously, where your app is blocked, but the other way is to run it asynchronously, where I can still use my robot while my app while the robot runs. So I'm free to do whatever I want to do on my app while the bot finishes up with the task that I assigned. Here, sending out the mail. Once sent, it will give me the pop-up that mail has been sent, that will confirm that the process run is complete. The other thing is the ability of storing multiple pages within the same app context. Right now, if you see, I just switched the pages, right? So it is loading the pages into the same page. So single page application kind of things can be achieved doing these things, and that's pretty much it. It covers all the things basically that you need to know. It is capable of, so the processes that we're running right now were attended robots, but you can also run unattended robots as well. And what else? Let me go back on the app side. Let me go to the editing part of it, so that if I feel that there is something else that I can let you know, I'll do that. Yeah, so you have, this is the studio experience that you will get. You will have all the kind of input controls here, all the kind of display controls here. You will have containers. Containers will help you in creating the correct layout for your system. And you also have some stock icons that you can use with your buttons or your placeholders, things like that. Here is where you create all the pages that is relevant to your application that you're developing. And then you have the ability of adding processes, which will basically list all the folders that's there within your orchestrator instance. And then you can select them, the processes that you want to use within this particular app directly here, right? So I had 3 of the processes that is listed here. It will also show you the parameters that it needs and the result that comes. So those are the things that can be that is visible in the apps directly as well, so that it's a single place of reference whenever you are developing something. Okay. Talking about the things that you can achieve with apps, obviously, it is a great way of putting a layer over your attended and unattended robots. It's a great way of replacing any kind of legacy apps with a modern framework, adding additional functionalities, so that the experience of the user, experience of the employees become more relevant, more joyful. And you also have the ability of basically combining multiple actions that a user might be doing in his day in day out jobs into a single application, and helping them by providing certain robots just a button away from them. So I'll show you certain screens that's there. This is one of the most advanced developers. This is an application that was developed by our product team. It's a agent console that has all the information on the one side. It is coming from various processes that has been run. It connects with your Twilio, Amazon Connect, so that calls and messages can be handled as well. Uh, all the information is there. All the actions can be taken here on this particular screen itself. And the next one is something a more generic, more lightweight. This is a request time off app. Basically, this runs for all the users in the organization, and they can run this once they are going on a holiday. It will take care of all your meeting schedules, sending cancellations for the meetings, creating out of office message for your communicators, for your applications like Slack, Teams, even in email. If you want additional emails to go and inform to your team, for example, that can be configured as well. You get the picture. It makes your life a lot easier. It makes the interaction feel a lot conventional by going through the route of having an app. And this is something that I quickly scribbled to show you what it can do in terms of your personal task manager. So there could be I'll explain you what these are, because obviously this is really bad. So this is a button that will talk to a robot that will help you fetch all the tasks that you have for the day on this particular panel. You can then click on one of those. The problem statement or the task that you have will be loaded here. If you have specific solutions, you can put it in here. You have other processes that the robots can run configured right here, so that if you need help with any of those, you have it in a single context itself. Once you are done with it, you can submit it, the case gets closed, and you can make it as complicated as you want or as simple as you want. That's the whole deal of it. That's a very brief, very brisk overview of apps that I had. And meanwhile, just type your questions on the chat. I'll answer there itself because I don't want to take time off other presenters. So Vibor, back to you. I'll take the questions on the chat itself.
Okay, great. Thanks, Anubhav. And so next speaker is Radu. Hi, Radu. Thanks for joining the
Hi, there.
session. Hey.
Hi, let me share my screen for 1 second. First of all, I was just looking. I found out I was typing right now. So Ramesh, we have this. I will send the link right away right after the session in the chat. Okay. So first of all, I wanna start with a short story. So here at UiPath, we keep talking about a robot for every person, but I think we all agree that you cannot have a robot for every person with the old tray. So it's not engaging someone that doesn't know what RPA is or what processes do, cannot engage with it and work with it. So it's not a good way to promote a robot for every person. So then we built the UiPath assistant, right? That will replace the tray. This is a more engaging product. It shows users what the process does. It can customize processes and so on. You can easily find processes. It's much more friendly. So I can see someone that is not technically using this kind of tool, right? But then a robot for every person is not just about running processes. You have to bring some more capabilities in this and things that maybe are not, we don't know how to solve or we are not aware of them. So that's why we built UiPath Assistant as being scalable and pluggable. So we can build, or any enterprise can build their own widgets. So for example, I have 2 widgets right here, right? A widget that allows you to start unattended jobs right from the assistant. So you just drag and drop the JavaScript file, the widget file. Here I have all the processes that I have access to, and I can start an unattended process, right, on a certain machine. And another example would be an asset widget. Wait, yeah, sorry. The demo guides are not with me today. It looks like. So you have a widget that just shows you the assets from Orchestrator, and you can create new ones or you can edit existing ones. So these are just 2 simple examples on how you can extend the assistance capabilities. But then you'd say, okay, but maybe not all enterprises want to bring all their features or all their capabilities into the assistant. And you're right. And for this, so if you want to bring the robot into your apps, not the apps into the robot, we have the robot.js. Basically, it's, wait, of course, nothing works for me today. Robot.js is basically a JavaScript SDK that you can add into your websites or apps, and you can control your robot with it. So for example, I can come here and list my processes, and I will see all the processes that I have available in my assistant. Right. Also, I will show you a sample here where I have all the processes, and I can start some of them. So for example, I want to start counter VB, right? It starts the process, and this should count each second. So yeah, seconds 1, 2, 3, right? So, but this is in a website. Right? It isn't in the assistant or anywhere else. And going back a bit further. So I want to share with you some ideas that we think would be cool to have for widgets and Robot.js, of course. First of all, we are talking about a robot for every person, and a robot for every person doesn't mean that we have to focus only on technical people or developers. We have to focus for everyone. So I don't think HR managers, accountants, financial people, and so on. Right? So I think that should be the first focus. So focus on business users, make it simple, make it friendly and easy to interact with. And in terms of ideas, I will share just a few with you. I don't know. For example, for widgets, have a dashboard with the processes that you use most, or I don't know, the number of hours you have your processes were executed, stuff like this. So people usually like that data. We have our Fitbits or our Apple Watches. We look on how much we run. We may want to look at how much we exercise with our robot as well. Then chatbots. So imagine a chatbot in your assistant with whom you can talk and, for example, say, okay, what process can I run for invoices, for processing invoices? And it says, okay, I have these 3 processes. Or, I don't know, set me a reminder for running this process every Sunday. Things like this, right? And then why not a process for a widget that shows my day? For example, I have a problem. I have multiple calendars, and I know there are a lot of apps that aggregate those, but they never work. I would love to have a widget in UiPath Assistant where I live every day and see there by the use of one process that collects the data, see there all my events or my calendar. And then why not open tasks? So I don't, my tasks from Jira, from whatever other systems that we're using. Why not seeing them in the assistant and maybe even interact with them, run some processes according to those tasks. So that's about widgets. About robot.js, some ideas would be integrating with ticketing systems. I know. For example, for us, for support, we are using Salesforce. But if you want to escalate something to the dev team, you have to go to Salesforce, take all the details, add them in Jira and so on. So it's a kind of a repetitive task. It would be nice to have a button right there, like escalate with the robot. And you press that button and it runs a process that copies that specific details and pastes them into Jira. So just for the ticket that you have opened. Something similar with chat systems. So for example, if you have offer support through chat, have a command or button that would take the chat and create a ticket in Salesforce or I don't know, ServiceNow or whatever. Also, JavaScript can be used or robot.js can be used in order to create integrations with Office. Think about Outlook. Having on an email so for each email that starts with invoice underscore, have a button that when you press, it downloads the attachment and runs a process according to it. And then I think the most simple idea for robot.js, and here's a great opportunity of doing something nice, is just having a configurable button that you can start a process with. So it would be nice to have a button that I can configure really fast and say, okay, I put it on my website and I say, anyone that presses that button should have this process running, right, in their assistant, in their robot, their attended robot. I don't know, think about the possibility of onboarding employees. So for example, you'd have like, you have to use Workday, right? Do you want to see how press this button? You press that button and then UiPath process with callouts and forms and so on starts and shows you how to do it. So these are some basic ideas on what can be achieved with widgets and robot.js. And now, if you guys have any questions for either me or Andrei Vasilescu, he's the dev that worked on the widgets, we are more than happy to help.
Yeah, hi, Radu. This is Ramesh. Thanks for this session. Can you please just open this widget file? I just want to see how does it look inside. The robot.js file, right?
The robot.js. Okay, let me. I should stop this 1 second.
Sure.
Yeah. So basically, it inits the UiPath robot, then it gets the processes, right? You have, this is what you want to see, right? Am I showing?
Correct.
Okay. Yeah. So it gets the processes. Here are the processes and creates a table with it. So when you get processes, you get just an array of processes with names and IDs and everything.
Okay.
And where it was, we had the run process. Okay. So running processes, you have a process, and on the process where it was process start, right? So through the list of processes, we find the process that we want. This was the name, as far as I remember, or oh no, the ID. Okay, the ID. We get the process again. We find the process that we want, and then you have process.start. So that starts the process, and you can have this callback, the status update, right? And you just send the status, you get the updated status. I think that's kind of it, because you only start process, you list them, you start them, you get the status. I think that's it, right?
Okay, thank you. Can you also please show your assistant? I have one question on that.
Assistant, yeah, this one.
So is it enterprise edition only, which will show this wizard tab, or on the top tab? Yeah. So I don't see this in my community edition. So is it different?
No, it shouldn't. Maybe you're not on the last version.
Okay.
It was released in community this one. I think 20.8 or 20.6, the new design, right? The first iteration of the new design. Or are you referring to this second column, the launchpad, as you call it?
No, the tab that you were showing.
The tab, right?
So I see only two tabs here in my case. It's just the home tab and
okay.
the reminders.
Okay, these are the custom widgets that I dragged at the beginning. So these are custom widgets.
I see. Got it. Okay.
Yeah, they are just some sample widgets, right?
Okay, so tab will come automatically based on the wizard.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Guys, any other question on assistant or widget?
So Rado, these wizard files, are they shareable? Can you share with the participants here?
Yeah, I'll try to share the source code. I'll get the source code and share it with you. Okay. Most probably, yes. I cannot promise. I will ask, but I don't see any problem.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, guys. If you don't have any, please.
No. So just to share that, sometime back we had done one hackathon on custom activities. So if you refer this link that I just shared, if you go there on the left panel, if you go to basic information, you can find some of the recordings on the custom activities and widgets and all, which you can again use it as a resources.
Thank you guys very much. Let us know if you have any other questions.
No questions? Okay, if we do not have any question for this category, so now I invite Gabriela, who is our expert for Trigger SDK. And hi, Gabriela, how are you?
Hello, everybody. Hope you're having a very instructive evening. I'm here to talk to you about our solution for the following automation scenario. You want to wait for an event to happen and then execute some action. There are several concerns around this issue, but the main one is that you want to be able to execute other activities while waiting for the event to happen. And another concern is regarding the customization of multiple ways that you can group triggers and actions. Maybe you want to execute an action when one or several events happen, or when just one happens. I will share my screen to show you in UiPath Studio what we have developed. So this is a normal workflow using the standard packages, UiPath system activities and UiPath UI automation. Okay, so now we have a parallel activity. This is used for the scenario in which you want to execute multiple activities while waiting for events to happen. And inside this parallel activity, you can have one or multiple trigger scope activities. This trigger scope activity is used for having in this section multiple one or more triggers, and when one of these triggers here is happens, the action section is executed. Okay, so in the standard product at this time, we have several triggers, and you can find them by searching with the keyword trigger here. And you have some triggers for monitoring processes. So process end and start trigger are used for waiting if a process starts or ends. It's very simple to use. You have to write only the process name here, and when that process ends, the action section is triggered here. And as I said, you can have multiple triggers here. They don't need to be of the same type. You can put, for example, some process monitoring triggers and the file change trigger. This file change trigger is used for monitoring changes on a file or on a folder from the file system. And then we have the UI automation triggers, which are click trigger and click image trigger, which are very similar. They basically monitor when the user clicks on something on the screen. Then you have the element attribute change trigger, which is more complicated. It monitors if a new element attribute has changed. The element state change trigger only monitors if an element appears or disappears from the screen, like a window or a message. Key press trigger monitors the pressing of a key from the keyboard in some window or application. And then you have the more lower framework triggers. Hotkey trigger, which monitors if the user presses some special combination of keys. Mouse trigger if the user presses a mouse button. And system trigger monitors both the mouse and the keyboard. If you want to use some more advanced triggers, you can use this package here, UiPath IPC activities. And this package has some more interesting triggers. Broadcast message and message received trigger. So this activity is not a trigger. You can add it here. you can edit outside the trigger scope and basically send a message on a channel from one process to another, or maybe in the same process. It's kind of, if you want to synchronize things and do more complicated automation scenarios, you can use these two activities. And of course, message receiver trigger listens for the message that you send with the broadcast message. Okay, so if you want to customize the behavior trigger scope, so if you let it do not customize the trigger scope at all, it listens for events from the triggers and then executes an action on a loop. So if you have the process and trigger here, and the process that you are monitoring ends several times, the action will be called several times. And if you want to execute the trigger scope only once, you have to configure it to be one time. And it may be noted that here in the action section, we have an args. This is passed from the trigger to this section here. If you want to maybe send some information from here to here, like if you have multiple triggers and you want to know which one was pressed, or some sort of information from the trigger that you want to process here, you can use the args. Okay, now in order to further have a broader platform, we have created an SDK for developers to create their own custom triggers. I have made for you guys a GitHub repo, which I will share in the chat section. Maybe if you want to use it later on, you can save it, because the chat section will not be available after the call ends. Yeah. Okay, so here you have a code that you will get you started creating your own custom triggers. And let me walk you through the process. So first of all, you'll need Visual Studio or some other IDE that is capable of working with the C# and having a NuGet package manager, because you will need to reference a package from from one of our feeds in order to develop custom triggers, and that package is UiPath platform. As you see here. You will have in the repo here, you'll have the full documentation, and also the feeds configured in the .NuGet folder in NuGet config. So you can use the details from here, or if you want to follow a more detailed process of creating your trigger, you can use the link available from the repo description. This one here. Okay, so once you have your packages set, you can start developing your custom triggers using this trigger base class, which is offered by us. And this is a standard activity, but the special part of it is these two methods. start monitor and stop monitor that if you override them, you can create the magic of the trigger. So let me give you an example. The start monitor, this is a method that is called when the trigger activity is scheduled to execute. So practically when the workflow starts executing your trigger, it calls start monitor. And here on start monitor, you can set up your environment and maybe make some configurations. But basically you want to make the arrangements in order to wait for something to happen. Like in this scenario here, where we have a simple timer, and when the timer period ends, we want to call the trigger scope activity, letting it know that our trigger happened. How we do this? We simply call send trigger with some arguments. This argument is a class that we have defined, and it's something that derived from trigger args, which is also a class from us, from the package that you referenced. And this is basically what you want to send to the trigger scope, what extra information you want to send to the trigger scope in order for the RPA dev to further process it in the action section. Okay, this send trigger, as you maybe is not that obvious, is an action that is a parameter to the start monitor. So you receive this action from our SDK at runtime, and you can call it whenever the trigger event happened. The stop monitor method, you don't need to override it, only in the case that you want to do some cleanup, or maybe get notified because your logic requires some ending of something in a form or another. We use it here to dispose the timer. Nothing too complex. And also be aware that using these types of activities, you will be using them inside a trigger scope that's inside a parallel, or a parallel for each activity. And in order for everything to work smoothly, Workflow Foundation requires that any state that you have in these activities, like this timer here, be a variable, not just a simple member to the class, but instead be a variable. This is something from Workflow Foundation. Do you have any questions until now?
Felipe, I see you raised your hand. You have any question?
Okay, this is Ramesh. Gabriel, can you show please how to use this timer trigger in our the workflow?
Oh yeah, sure. In order to use it in the workflow, you have to package it in a NuGet package. Mm-hmm. I don't have that set up right now, but you can find a very instructive documentation from Microsoft on MSDN. But once you have your package, which will be something like this, you can place this package in a local feed for UiPath Studio. So you go here to manage packages, go to settings, and add something like this, your local feed. So it's nothing but a folder which contains your package. And then Studio will know to look for your package here. And then you can reference it through the project dependencies, and you will have your trigger available in this section. Because you used our SDK, you will be able to drag the trigger inside the trigger scope in the trigger section, because you are not allowed to drag any type of activity here, like write line, for example. You can drop it here.
Yeah, got it. Thank you. And also, can you please share the GitHub link that you were talking about?
Yeah, I don't seem to be able to open the chat.
Oh, is it? Okay.
But I think if
you can send it to me. Yeah, you can send it to me or Radu, and I will share it with.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, thank you, Gabriel.
Okay, the next part is just some ideas for you guys, because maybe you are wondering what types of triggers are in demand, or maybe nice to have, or what you can practically do with this SDK, except the triggers that are released with our product. So very in-demand triggers are Excel triggers, like a row was added to a spreadsheet, a cell value change in the spreadsheet. Lots of our customers use Excel, so these types of triggers would be very nice for them. Then you have the kind of trigger that monitors a machine or operating system, like you want to monitor if a process starts on a remote computer on specific times, on specific days, or you want to monitor when a list of applications are installed on a local or remote computer, or maybe you want to query the Windows event logs on a local or remote machine, and if you find something in those logs, you can trigger an event. These are all nice to have for triggers, and I think they are worthwhile implementing. So that's about all. If you have any more questions, I'm here. I just sent you the GitHub link on the messenger.
So do we have any question for Gabriela or Radu? Otherwise, we can wrap up the call.
Okay, thank you guys, and happy coding.
Have a great time and have a great weekend. Best wishes for your hackathon.